This is a Hot Pie Original.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Inhumane podcast. We are going to get into episode 14 and it is exciting. We have a phenomenal guest. We have Stephanie Myers with Saved in America based out of California. Stephanie's resume in itself is outstanding. This female is like hear me roar kind of female. She has worked with the Department of Defense. She has been like nominated for like supply chain awards, which helped her actually get on to The Apprentice. I'm trying to remember which season that was, but she was on The Apprentice, which then led her to be on a committee with President Trump as well. And so she just rocks and in so many ways. And so much so that she became part of Saved in America because of her crazy IT background and working with the military and things of that nature. And so Saved in America, what they do to help our kids who are missing here in the United States should not only they get tons of awards and accolades for that, but they should have a special place in heaven because the number of kids that are missing here in the United States is astonishing. And they have access to so much and they're saving kids left and right. So listen in to me and Stephanie talk. You are just going to love what she brings to the table. Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on the Inhumane podcast. We're really, really excited. It's great to see your face again. I was looking at your bio again, and of course the wonderful picture that you have on. But I was like, oh, I can't wait to see your face because we'll just get our chemistry back on now that we're here live. And
thank you for having me.
Anytime. I'm already thinking of really part 2 and part 3. I'm like, she's just gonna have to come back on in a couple more months.
Fantastic. I will definitely do it because this issue is growing exponentially out here across the country.
Yeah, to say the least, right? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, let's go ahead and jump on in. And with your fabulous life, I would love the listeners to know what compelled you to get into the dark realm of anti-human trafficking.
Yeah. So my background, give you a little bit about my background. I am not a mother. I do not have children. I live here in San Diego. I live about 30 miles north of our border. San Diego, for some of those that don't know, is the second largest corridor for human trafficking, sex trafficking, and drug trafficking. Yeah. Our issues are growing exponentially. Saved in America, I was wonderfully introduced to the founder, Joseph Travers, that Saved in America, in fact, is a nonprofit. We're a 501c3. We do not charge families. We 100% provide service with law enforcement to help locate and retrieve children. Now, again, I said I live 30 miles north of the border. With what's going on here in San Diego, one of the reasons I wanted to be on the board for Saved America was, number one, since I don't have children, I figured I could rescue other people's children. Number two, I believe in the cause and I believe in those volunteers who are comprised of law enforcement, ex-law enforcement, active military, Navy SEALs, insured private investigators, those amazing folks who volunteer their time to, no kidding, put themselves in the line of danger to help locate and retrieve missing children.
Yeah, well said. And I love how you stress, you're like, hey, I don't have children, but I feel and I felt compelled to do something. And, and that tells me, and actually circling back when you say I live 30 miles north of the Mexican American US border, and you feel like you have to do something for your community. So you don't have children. However, is it affecting you in some way, shape, or form? Absolutely.
100%. Yes. They are in every community. So let me give you an example. So there are approximately 50 public middle schools and high schools. We have identified a pimp at each one of those public schools. It doesn't matter what section of San Diego or Southern California you live in,
right?
Rich, poor, there's no demographics.
That's
if
right.
These pimps can make $1 off you, they're going to. Lately, with the border crisis, you may have caught one of the boats that crashed off of Point Loma. There are, no kidding, panga boats making it all the way up to La Jolla, human trafficking. Unfortunately, almost a week ago, a boat did hit some rough reefs out there outside of Point Loma. People have died, but it was human smuggling. They are coming in here by the dozens. Right. It's just growing exponentially when you have open borders, unregistered migrants coming in. Basically, at this point, the cartels are running the borders. Who do you think the pimps work for?
Right.
It's getting out of control.
And those of you who aren't that familiar with California, when Stephanie says La Jolla is a very wealthy area of California. Absolute gorgeous scenery. But I can't think of the median income right now for La Jolla, but go look it up. It is when she says, and here on the Inhumane podcast, we constantly say that there is no demographic. If you are an individual, you have become a commodity and they are going to make money off of you in every single side of town. No one is immune to it, right? Please go take a look. Now, that's the other thing when you're saying, hey, we're getting all these human smugglers, right? We know the cartel takes a huge part of, it's just organized crime. So they take a huge part of human trafficking, just like they do guns and drugs. Yeah. And the other ugly part, I think, of the conversation that people continue to avoid is how much human trafficking is advertised via our big tech in South America, in Central America, where these individuals are coming from. And of course, on the other side of the world too, right? When they're coming, especially in California, with the organization I worked with, you had poor countries in Africa, Middle East, and they're coming that direction up Northern California, right? In Asia as well. Yeah. So human trafficking is not just happening on the Mexico-US border. And California gets a lot of that on the other side, port-wise, up north. And so we're not having that conversation how they're literally advertising and telling them, hey, for $9,000, we'll get your child across, to the US to have a better life. Or, you can come work over here as a welder, as a this, as a that, or go to school. And there's literally advertisement and Facebook groups that are saying, come here illegally and have your child come and suffer. And I mentioned on one of our other episodes, I said, me as a parent, if I met this person online and said, oh, hey, can you take my kid across the United States and I'll pay you? And along the way, my child gets, raped, all the horrible things that happen in human trafficking. What would happen to me? What would happen to me? Right. But yet all we do is constantly give, honestly, justification and excuses and say, well, because of where they live, they have no other choice. Why would you put a child in those circumstances, knowing that these things are going to happen to them? And no one wants to talk about that part.
Yeah. And, and to add on to that too, what people don't realize, you as a parent are going to pay to get your child across the border. Normally, there has to be a payment once that child gets over the border. Right. And what people don't understand, if that family member or friend does not pay the cartel and the pimps, how do you think they're going to get their money? They're going to sell you in the trade. They're going to sex traffic you. It is unbearable to see videos. Yeah. I have seen videos, I'm sure you have too, about what pimps do. And it's not just girls, it's boys too that are being trafficked. What they do, how they treat them. I mean, it's really sad, but there were hotels locally in San Diego that had a menu and you could pick the child that you wanted while you were on a business trip. Especially, and you know, whenever there's a huge Super Bowls, World Series, any major convention or anything in the city, you guarantee the cartel and the pimps are all out and they're pimping their women. I watch a lot of documentaries, a lot of shows on this. I try to educate everyone I possibly can because no one can prevent this. We're all susceptible to this. Yeah. It's a matter of education, security, and by the way, age group. You know, there's a lot of women out there on these dating apps. You have no idea who you're talking to.
That's right.
Absolutely none. A few of us here, we share our location and we always share details if we're going out or have meetings with certain people we've met before. But it's growing substantially. Unfortunately, here in California, our leadership has failed us tremendously. When COVID hit, they started letting a lot of the bad prisoners, the really bad ones, out. Guess what? Our coronavirus crimes went up. When you start letting the bad guys out who should not be out of prison, I mean, it's just boggles my mind knowing that this is what happened. Yeah. The other thing our leadership did was they passed SB 145. SB 145 can prohibit folks from being accountable, arrested, and registering as sex trafficking if there's a 10-year age gap and you had a sexual encounter. This affects anyone from 14 on up. My thought on this is, again, you failed our state because if you aren't being held accountable for having sexual acts with a minor as young as 14 years old, then guess what? You don't have to register in the sex offenders registry list. Right. So how are we going to find you? We can't keep tabs on you. Secondly, again, more acts are occurring tremendously. We actually wrote a letter, Saved in America. We wrote a letter to our Governor Gavin Newsom. We have not heard back, explaining and mapping out what that does to all of the children, not even in California, but it's going to ricochet effect.
That's right.
So, you know, there's laws not being passed. People are afraid to talk about it. People don't understand the security concerns, the coronavirus crimes. Kids now more than ever are online because guess what? We're still not 100% back to school. Where do you think these predators find you? They find you online. Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, they're luring everybody away. And guess what? Once those children start speaking to these predators, you start getting into what's called sextortion. And you know where I'm going with this. It's just growing, and growing. And unfortunately, we need to find good leadership. We need to strengthen these laws. So what Saved in America has been doing, we've been working across the nation because it's not just California. Right. We've got to strengthen these laws, change these laws, work with different congressional seats, Arizona, California. We've got some great senators and congressmen. Doesn't matter what side you're on.
That's right.
Everybody should care about this. This is a bipartisan issue. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, you should care about your community. So we're working with attorney generals and folks because if the laws aren't strengthened, that's not going to scare away the cartel and the pimps. They're not going to care. They get arrested. Great. I'm in jail for 6 months. I'm out.
No deterrence at all whatsoever. Absolutely.
Zero. And it's just so frustrating with the border issues right now. You know, our entire San Diego Convention Center has turned into a refugee camp. That's all there is. And our convention center is one of the largest ones in the United States.
That is, I mean, and it should be mind blowing to people on what is happening there. And I really want to kind of stress something that you mentioned when you started talking about SB 145. I'm like, okay, I see where she's going with that. Most people in the other states are like, once they're informed of that law that got passed with this ridiculous 10-year gap, and then you don't have to register as a sex offender, they're shocked when I talk about it, but then they go right into, oh, it's California. I said, whoa. Yeah. What you don't understand is and you said it perfectly, ricochet. It's totally a domino effect, and they don't realize how that can quickly go into their state, because you always have someone, they're like, oh, let's model what California's doing. Let's model what New York's doing. Let's model what this individual is doing. And let's go ahead and put that. And they do it secretly, right? Because tell everyone how SB 145 got passed. I think you and I had this conversation. What time of day was that?
I believe it was 11 o'clock at night when no one else could oppose it.
That's exactly it. So think about that, people. Yeah. 11 o'clock at night is when they did that. So you can't tell me that when you're doing something in the dark like that this is better for society. Because if it is, you'd be doing it in broad daylight and trying to get everyone on board. So look at what Stephanie's saying with California. That law is dangerous in every single state. And there are some states right now where people are not being prosecuted because in their state, a minor is not until like they're, I think it's like 15, 16, right? Then they're an adult. So yes, we have the federal law of them being 18, but still within certain states, they're like, oh, well, 15. So that you could get married at 15, right? And things along those lines. Very, very gray area that's so sticky and so dangerous that doesn't protect children. So I appreciate you mentioning that. And so what gaps do Saved in America fulfill in the anti-human trafficking space, missing children, child sex abuse? I mean, we could go on and on, right? Juvenile crime, poverty. What gaps do y'all fill?
Well, the one of the major gaps, well, we could go on and on with the whole policing and defunding the police and all of that. So we are a resource that does not charge either of the parents. If your child goes missing, obviously you're going to call the police, but sometimes look what's going on right now.
Right.
They may not be able just to jump right on it. So you contact Save in America. So our email is info@savedinamerica.org, or you call us at 760-348-8808. The minute a parent calls us, we do not charge for any of our services. Beautiful. We are going to get on it, and we're going to start doing our own intellectual investigation. When I say intellectual IT, there's proprietary things that we do to immediately try and locate your child.
Yeah.
The other thing that we do, and remember, we're comprised of ex-police officers, current police officers, military, Navy SEALs, insured private investigators. We have the best of the best you could ever find. A child is our team.
Yeah.
So number one, we're free. You reach out to us and we're not stopping until we find your child. We assist local law enforcement because keep in mind, some of them are minors. So we will definitely assist in local law enforcement. We stay close to the family and we ensure that we can retrieve your child safely. Now, when we do locate them, if they're a minor, obviously we are there with the police force. Going to get them. But that's a huge topic is we don't charge. So you got to be careful when you work with different organizations if they're charging. We are passionate about this. We run off donations. We're not charging anyone to find your child. The parents have had enough to deal with. The other thing that we are constantly looking at, and you're aware of this, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, because a child may be missing or trafficked. A missing child can be trafficked, but sometimes they coincide.
That's right.
At first, they may be missing, but we did not know their girlfriend who they're in school with or a friend from another community lured her away from her family, and now she's trafficked.
Right.
So obviously, at first, they're missing until you are able to do your due diligence and understand that they're trafficked. But one of the major gaps that makes us stand out is that we actually locate and work with the police to help retrieve them. From there, the most important thing when we do retrieve a child, you don't just send them back home. People have to understand how physically and emotionally they have been beaten down. So we try to also locate transitional homes, rehabilitation. And once they get through all that, we actually even have a scholarship foundation that we give to children that have actually survived, gone through the rehabilitation, gone to a transitional home, to help them get back on their feet. There's a lot of intense therapy and a lot of work that happens once you locate a child. And number one thing is you do not want to put them back in their home, because people have to understand that pimp has brainwashed them where they don't trust anyone at home. They want to go directly back to the pimp because he loves me.
Right.
He wants to be with me. He told me I can't trust my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And we have videos. If anyone's interested, we do have videos on our website that show some retrievals. And there are girls screaming and kicking because they don't want the police to help them. They want to go back to that pimp.
That's right.
So we go the full gamut. We work with a lot of different organizations. In fact, right now, Saved in America is working on buying a transitional home for minors. There is not one that exists in Southern California. There are for anyone 18 and over, but not for minors. So that is one key thing that we are working on right now, is grabbing as many donations as we can so that we can procure a home. And it's specifically for minors. And guess what? It's temporary. Go to the next step for the psychological damage and evaluation that they need to go through.
Yeah.
So that's what I believe we stand out for, because we haven't met, we've seen a lot of different organizations, but we haven't seen anybody go full circle from start to finish where we end up giving a scholarship away.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Right. And that's, there are so many gaps, so many holes, and the lack of collaboration. And you and I have talked about this, all the silos, right, in this space, and everyone kind of wants they don't want to play in each other's sandbox. And it makes it really difficult for the actual victim, right? We want them to be a victor, but there's all these gaps, and it's really hard for them to be that holistic individual, right? When we're not providing all those services. So you have like this, like you said, full circle, like you go from really start to finish, and it is a loop, and that's amazing. And we thank y'all for doing that. And we'll talk more about, that transitional home that you're going to have, a residential home for minors specifically. I would like to know your thoughts. You mentioned like NCMEC, that's the center, right? Everyone for missing and exploited children. Is you hear constantly missing versus runaway. And it can't irk me enough that we are differentiating a child being gone away from their family, period. That we literally have put them in two categories, missing and runaway. And missing gets priority over runaway, especially if there has been a pattern. And I constantly think of foster care kids, right? Like, if they've been through 10 different homes in just a couple of years, heck yeah, they're going to run away. Clearly it's crappy. So, but there's less attention on them, and there's more attention if you're missing. So I'd love to know your thoughts on why they're all not treated the same.
Well, I look at them being the same, because how can you define somebody ran away when you have no idea who they've been talking to, who their friends are?
Yeah.
It drives me nuts. We'll watch the local news. There's a runaway. How the hell do you know they ran away? Yeah. How do you know they're not talking to some 50-year-old or somebody lured them away?
Right.
You know, I never understood why people jump to they ran away. No, they didn't run away. Yeah. They got lured. They're missing. They are missing, and they're being exploited. It drives me nuts, because I really don't get how they could categorize running away as, they weren't happy at home, they ran away. I don't buy it until you can actually do the due diligence and break down into their phones or social media, Instagram, Facebook. I don't believe the runaway stories. Even when adults, we have a missing woman in Chula Vista, I have my theories on stuff. They don't just up and run away and there's no trail. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. See, I love that. And I think, for the listeners, like, I'm smiling when I say this, and I'm sure you as well, because I cannot comprehend that. Like, it makes, like you said, absolutely no sense. And I really think that honestly goes back to justifying, like, oh, this is just, teenage rebellion. And right. And I've seen some families get attacked brutally when they say, oh, well, your daughter was promiscuous. Look at all her things and what she posted. And now she's gone and now you're mad and you're going to say it's human trafficking or sex trafficking. When in reality, if you're in this field doing the work, you know exactly that there is some coercion in there, 100%. And when, like you said, when you break it down and look at the trail, lo and behold, this is what we find.
And you know what? To add on to that, it's interesting because a lot of parents, I speak to a lot of parents all over in my community. Oh, it will never happen to me. Oh, it's never going to happen to me. It would never happen in my community. Yeah. So when their child goes missing, they just assume, oh, they got mad, they ran away because they're in denial. They're in denial that it actually happened to them. I have given so many different briefings on how to keep tabs on your child. Every parent should. You know, how do you know? Oh, it wouldn't be my child. They ran away. You have no idea what goes on, you know, in the real world, even video games, gaming, any way somebody can talk to you. But yeah, a lot of it I feel like some people think that can never happen to me. Oh, they probably just ran away. We got in an argument.
Yeah.
But no, lo and behold, no, they actually are in every community here. There are stash houses all over.
Right.
They don't care what the demographic is.
Yeah. And see, that's what, like you said, you know, you're educating the public, and that's obviously what this podcast is for. I've told you that this is specifically for the community. And we're throwing out all the jargon so that parents and community members understand the severity. And when we continue to think of all of this is almost teenage rebellion, like we did maybe 20 years ago, you're comparing apples to oranges because you had less missing children back then because you did not have social media. They didn't have you didn't have access to these kids, right? Like you had to physically lure them. You had to constantly be around them in their environment where there are more parents and community members looking out. Now you don't have that. It is literally all, like majority of it, right, is moved to all online. So they have more access to kids. So that's why there's more missing. And so we can't continue justifying that this is, like you said, teenage rebellion, or this can never happen to me in my community. She probably just went away for a few days, or he did, and blew off some steam. And then there you go. They're gone. And
you know, the first 24 to 48 hours is so vital. Once they go over that border, right now, I don't think anybody would try to go over the border and save an American child, but it's almost impossible to find. I want to read you some stats.
Please.
So if any parents out there are listening, if I had a child, it would be like Fort Knox at my house. Let me give some stats. This is what's scary, and you probably already know these. 1 in 5 kids have been sexually solicited online. 20% of high schoolers have met someone in person they first ever met on the internet. 24% of teens have been involved in some type of sexting, teenagers. This is mind-boggling. And this is why my house would be like Fort Knox with a child and a cell phone. 1 in 7 children with a smartphone have received a sext by the age of 10 years old.
Yeah.
And 1 in 3 children with sex abuse images are posted by the child. Minors like to share graphic images for likes on social media. If that is not telling, I mean, I don't know what else is. It boggles my mind too that, you know, yes, we have dual parents working in a household. Your child needs a smartphone. That's fine for safety reasons.
Sure.
But you should have access, know all the passwords, know what apps are on there, and you should be reading every text, every message, or actually I would limit them from any of that. I would give them a flip phone, something that was just not having anything. Because once you hand that smartphone over, and as a parent, I feel like it's your obligation to keep tabs. You should be in charge of your child's safety.
Right.
Starts at home. Morals, values, communications. You know, all of that starts at home. If you're not keeping tabs, this is where you lose control and focus. And this is how we end up where we are today.
Right. No, I appreciate that. And I think, I always think about when it comes to digital responsibility, right? It's very surface level, right? If you think about a majority of the education and that parents are getting, and me as a former public school teacher as well, what we were giving students was just very surface level.
Yeah.
And in reality, you have to have deeper conversations because yes, like you just stated, it is now third graders and at the third grade level, they snitch on each other in a good, healthy way. And the surveys are stating that when third graders are asked, especially when they're gaming, boys specifically, they're like, oh yeah, someone sent me a picture of and trigger warning audience, but someone sent me a picture of a penis. And then they asked Johnny to send his penis, right? Like a picture of his penis, like they're telling on each other, but they never told their parents that because it was in the moment of a game. They didn't see any harm of it, right? And they just continue. However, eventually that curiosity, right, is going to do something, as well as the vulnerability of a third grader, which they have tons of them because they're in third grade. They're 10 years old.
Third grade.
And an adult manipulating them to eventually, right, interact with that sexting, right, and that coercion. Yeah. And so I think of that in regards to you don't just give your 15-year-old the car keys and say, go ahead. You have parents that are more helicopter parents over driving a vehicle, right? And they're constantly like, let's turn off your text while you're driving. They'll let me know if you drive over the speed limit, your insurance. I mean, they're so great at it. They're great. But when it comes to a cell phone and everything online, for some reason, it is like way over here, not even thought about. Like, right? You know that you should tell me. And that's kind of, like I said, very surface level.
It's surface.
Yeah. And we have to dig deeper because to me right now, being online is more dangerous than driving a car, as a 15-year-old.
100%. And even though you can give a child a cell phone and you're like, oh, I can track them. They have Find My Friends. You don't think a high school kid knows how to turn that off?
That's right.
I mean, when we're doing something bad, you don't want your parents to know where you are. Yeah. I mean, we got to be smart about it. It's got to start from home. The other thing too, and I tell you, with technology today, I mean, my house is like Fort Knox. I've got cameras everywhere. I can always pull back the thread and see what the heck's going on. You've got to be smart. You've got to communicate with your children. You've got to teach them that there are bad people out there. Now more than ever, I can't emphasize because our border, eventually in the next coming weeks, we have a mobile command center where we're going to go down the border and film. And just so people can see this is what's happening.
Wow.
We're trying to pull some local congressional senators to come with us because everybody's talking about your state, which your state is number one for this. No one's talking about my state.
Yeah.
When the numbers are growing. So, we're trying to bring more awareness of what's going on because it's coming up the corridor.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's mind-boggling when you have access to so many tools. Parents do, technology, ways to keep tabs on your children, and it doesn't occur. When I was growing up, cell phones didn't exist.
That's right.
I remember my mom's like, you better be home at 6 o'clock before dinner. We just came home at 6 o'clock,
Your internal clock.
But they knew my friends' phone numbers, who I was hanging out with, whatever. That's the other thing. Got to keep tabs on who your kids are hanging out with because a lot of the children are also lured by their friends because the pimps know they're going to have a more leniency if they get caught luring the children than they will themselves. So I can't tell you how many cases we've had where children are lured, girls, by their girlfriends.
That's right. Yeah.
And by the way, they get trafficked more than once. This is not a one-time deal most of the time. As you know, we put them, rescue them, we try to help them. They get trafficked again.
Yeah.
Because remember their mental state. They have been so abused that their emotional state of mind, it takes years to help with an individual, or sometimes they get trafficked again. We have rescued some girls twice.
Wow.
For that.
Yeah, that sadly it's not a shock in our field, but the public really should be shocked by that. Really should be shocked and say, you're right. The prevention needs to be a lot more aggressive than the rescue, because right, and this is what I tell people all the time, right? The rescue is like, it's sexy. It's emotionally charging, right? And people only want to think of the rescue. And I'm like, whoa, that is us behind the ball. We need to get on the prevention side. Yes, the rescue, of course, it's a necessity and it's needed. Absolutely. But when are we going to get on this end, on the prevention, to protect them so they don't have to go through that? Because as you mentioned, the years of trauma that it takes them to be a healthy, whole person with healthy relationships with just even their own parent and, their own parents that, I think a lot of people, they think that this only happens to at-risk kids, but you have 2-parent healthy homes that did everything right, if you will. And yet their child that they love so much, they can't have a healthy relationship with them anymore because they're going through all this trauma. So we need to get on the prevention end, right? And really be aggressive. And that takes the community. That takes all of leadership. And that's what I tell the community is, we need your skill set. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you're a plumber. I don't care if you pick up garbage. I don't care if you're the 90-year-old grandmother sitting outside looking at the neighborhood. I need you in this fight, right? Your skill set will help us with prevention. Okay, everyone, we are going to push pause with part 1 with Stephanie Myers with Saved in America. Definitely come back to episode 15, part 2. We're actually going to talk about how Saved in America and the anatomy of rescue, basically, that they do. So you're going to want to tune in for that. We'll see ya.
Thanks for listening. You can find more episodes and all other Hot Pie Media originals baked fresh daily at our home on the web at hotpiemedia.com, the Hot Pie Media YouTube channel, or wherever you listen to podcasts.